What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Event Guys podcast. Our goal on this show is to help event profs be successful in this awesome industry that we're in. And whatever your path is, whether you're starting your own company, building your career, or developing your personal brand, we promise to bring together amazing guests and discuss relevant topics to help you along the way. Today, the Event Guys talk to Michelle Street about effective leadership and team building, and also about her efforts lobbying on behalf of the entire event industry to get us opened back up. It's an awesome conversation, so enjoy this episode with Michelle Street. Oh, this is going to be a good one today. We got Michelle Street. Michelle is the general manager of the Troy Marriott, an awesome, wonderful person, a great time to hang around, and also a very important person for our little event industry. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Michelle, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you here. So let's lay out what's going on today. So we definitely, like all of our episodes with all of our guests, we want to talk about, who you are and how you got to this place that you've gotten to. Obviously, I know you, my wife worked for you when she was in the event industry. So I've seen you in action. I've seen the team that you've built. I definitely do want to talk about that a little bit. How you build an effective team. I've every time I've seen you in action over there, I feel like you're the head duck in the V, and your team is right there behind you, and you guys are just plowing forward, and you're a well-oiled machine. So I want to talk about that. But recently, you've also had the chance to speak on our behalf to our state legislature and about how things are working and where they should be going versus where they are going. And that's the story we want to tell today. But start off by talking to us about who you are, how you got to be where you are, and what you do over there at the Troy Marriott.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to actually being here to share my story as well as what we're pushing for our entire industry. But again, my name is Michelle Street. I have been the general manager of the locally owned, and I say locally because there'll be a story to that, locally owned Troy Marriott out in Oakland County. I've been the general manager for 14 years. However, I've been in the industry for over 30 plus years.
So you started when you were like 9 then?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
Maybe 7.5.
Okay. Got it.
But anyway, so really I've been in a lot of states. I've held a lot of different positions within Marriott. But I think what we really want to target on is just my history here in Michigan. So as a regional, I opened up hotels, assisted with that, and also did quite a bit of training. Well, when the RenCen was converting into a Marriott, I had that regional role. And so I was actually part of the opening of that hotel. Well, I absolutely fell in love with that hotel and opened up many of the franchise hotels that we have currently here in the state.
That's great.
Yeah, from Auburn Hills, just a handful.
And just to clarify, so
Yes.
Marriott is a big company, and they have lots of hotels. A portion of their hotels are company-owned, and a portion of Marriott's are franchise-owned, meaning they're independently run. Is that right?
Yes, a little bit further to that. So we have a very, very small percentage of Marriott International hotels that are actually owned by Marriott. Many of the hotels are managed by Marriott. So, for example, my hotel, we are managed by Marriott, however, owned by local ownership. And then we also have the segment or the group that is actually franchise that has a separate management group. So we have 3 different kind of folds. For Marriott International to own, I think they own less than maybe 5% of all the hotels in the world.
So their job is to keep building the brand, and you guys run the hotels.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yes. Which, it's really important because as we were sharing up at the Capitol, we really don't think that these senators and just the governors, everyone, the governor, I should say, doesn't understand that. I think that they think when they're looking at granting monies to the different companies and, what they're focused on, they just think that Marriott is this brand that will go ahead and cover, all expenses. And you look at the book Cadillac, for example, just hearing that story about the possibility of them foreclosing. Well, they're in our portfolio. The Westin, is a portfolio for us. Marriott's not going to be stepping in and assisting with it.
Right.
So it's really just, having them understand that all of these different brands, not only, Marriott, but all the other, boutique hotels and all the other brands many of them are owned by local owners. And we definitely need help, especially during this epidemic. So to go back to my little story. So I ended up just falling in love with the RenCen, to be honest with you. And I left the RenCen after we converted it to a Marriott. I had this great gig in Ohio to train all of the hotels in Ohio on service standards. So I had a total month of flying around. And what was great is that I was part of the developing that training. So it wasn't that I had to go back into my room every day and refocus on all the training. I really enjoyed that entire experience in Ohio, which was really kind of cool. Well, my last day in Hawaii, I received a phone call that my job was being eliminated. And so at that point, the general manager of the Detroit Marriott at the Renaissance Center called me and said, this is what's happening. We'd love to have you as the resident manager. So immediately I took on that position as the resident manager and held several different, business cards, you can say. However, I supported the rooms portion of the RenCen. I worked at the RenCen for, over 5 years in that particular position. And then the Troy Marriott, which is really probably one of my favorite hotels ever. The general position was the general manager's position was open, and so I posted for the job. All excited that I was going to get it. However, I didn't get it the first time, and the reason being is I didn't have any food and beverage experience, and so went back, and figured out what I needed to do. So the general manager at the time said, "Why don't you go ahead and be the director of event management at the RenCen? You'll get, we'll have a dotted line to the chef. You'll get F&B experience. So when that hotel opens up again, hopefully you can get that position." So that's what I did. So I was the director of event management for a year that was probably the most incredible year that we faced at the RenCen in all my years that I was there.
When was that?
That was actually Super Bowl year.
Oh,
that's great.
Oh, it was great. But the funny thing is, I knew nothing about systems. But what I knew is I knew the staff, I knew the team, I knew that whatever we needed to do, we will make it happen. And it's just having that really solid team of trust and dedication. And we had really an amazing year. So we started off thinking the Super Bowl was going to be that was it, right? Well, then we had the All-Star game.
Yep.
And then the last but not least was the first Quicken Loans holiday party, which was over 5,000, individuals that just took over the entire RenCen. And it was a pretty amazing year for us. So we wrote up a story. We thought, hey, maybe what we can do is win an award with Marriott. With everything that we did. And last but not least, we did. We won Global Event Team of the Year award.
Not too bad, huh?
We were blown out of the water. It was just, I called the team when I heard, and we're all in tears. We were just so happy that we were able to win that.
And just to clarify, somebody,
Yes.
So you mentioned, that you did the Quicken holiday party. Somebody would say, okay, Super Bowl, All-Star party, and company holiday. Quicken Loans and Dan Gilbert and his team, when they had the choice to either go to Chicago or New York, whatever, Dan Gilbert chose to bring his company to downtown Detroit and saw an opportunity to help to basically to grow his company by utilizing the, at the time, very underutilized resources of downtown Detroit. And a lot of people, along with the Illiches, say he is a big part of why the Detroit Renaissance happened. And so his company grew like crazy. So when you say you threw their holiday parties, that was a ginormous deal. That wasn't just some tiny little company party. That was a citywide event.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, every single area of the RenCen, they wanted to have an experience for their team. And it was really wonderful because it was a thank you. It wasn't just, that regular party. They wanted to have experiences in every single, room. So we had, Kid Rock show up and perform in our ballroom. Then we had, a different setup in our Ambassador Ballroom. Then they'd go downstairs and experience GM World Center. So, it was just so incredible. And when I say that, those were 3 pretty major events, not including the 2 major pharmaceutical pieces of business that we won that year, not including, the huge Ford meeting in General Motors headquarters, that we had to turn the entire hotel of 1,000+ rooms from a sold out night to get ready for Ford to sell out the hotel again. It was just all these little increments. And when you look at the whole piece, I say those 3 big pieces because people will know that in our industry, right?
Yeah.
They won't know the other huge programs that we had. And it was just really magical. The experience was phenomenal. So going back to my story, so here we won this event, this huge award with Marriott, and it was global. It wasn't just the United States, it was global. And so I get back, and 2 weeks later, the position of the Troy Marriott opened up again. And so I went for it. And the reason why I fell in love with that hotel is in my regional role, I did quite a bit of training. We turned that hotel from a franchise property to a Marriott managed. And so I was part of that change. And I really felt that hotel just gave so much love and care, and the associates around it just wanted to be the best that they could. And I actually fell in love with that hotel at that point. Funny thing is, while I was taking it over, blind date, met my husband, crazy as it is.
Who works in the industry.
Yes, exactly. And so it was very, very special for me to be able to accept that position as the general manager. And it was 14 years later, that I'm still there. And every day, and I tell many of my associates as well as just peers or who just wants to hear from me, that there is not a day that I don't wake up that I cannot wait to go to work. And that has to be something very special.
That says a lot.
Yeah, that I can't wait. They're part of my family. They're great.
And a lot of people in the event industry can share that, even with the stress and the anxiety of the big events. I think most of us still do feel that way. I'll say, so I'm curious, okay, so when you were doing these big events that led to you winning this global award from Marriott, let's call that, not your formative years, but when you were like establishing your reputation and building the name that would eventually lead to the job you have now, do you feel like you always had this mindset of leadership, or how did you build and how do you lead a team, and how do you identify your strong players and your weak players? What's your mindset when you're leading a team like that?
What can you teach us?
Yeah.
Okay.
And before you answer it, on this side, there's a couple little flyaways on that side. Give it a little, whoosh, and you got it.
And by the way,
So are you cutting
I'm
this
the
portion
hairdresser.
off or no?
No.
well, yeah, this
okay.
little bit right here will edit right past.
Okay, perfect.
And you might hear Paisley barking next door. That's
Adorable.
Our puppy.
I wish you could see
That's
right
the
on my
mascot.
We
lap.
might let her in here in a minute.
Excellent. Okay.
Team
so
building.
Team building.
How do you do it?
Leadership. Well, it started, honestly, at the age of 13 years old. And, when I was younger, I have 2 older brothers, and they played hockey, ice hockey. And, I didn't have much to do. I'm originally from Chicago, so we would take the bus down to the ice rink, and I would watch them. Well, I decided that I wanted to figure skate. And so, my mom's like, okay, well, this is kind of a big deal. Are you sure you're going to be able to commit to, the expectation of, really becoming a good figure skater, or just,
Right.
focusing on that sport? And I said, absolutely. Well, I started skating when I was, I think, 7.5 years old, and just loved being a skater. Well, at the age of almost 13, I decided that I wanted to do a little bit more. I was a single skater, but also I became the captain of the precision team. And so that was 25 gals, or girls at the time. I was the youngest skater on that precision team. I was the captain. And I think, from a leadership standpoint, that was the beginning of me understanding what I needed to do to build a team, to be successful, and to really have people dedicated and energized to want to be on a team. And I always look back at that because every moment of my career, from working in New York, back in Chicago, here in Detroit, it always brings me back home to just, taking charge to a degree of allowing your team to have a say in how we're going to get better. Number one, to be part of the team, to be with them at all times, and not just say something and not do it. And so at the Rensen, it was really quite amazing because not only did you have to create this great environment in the hotel, you also had to create a great relationship with all of the individuals that worked at the RenCen because you needed
Right.
them. There's, we had a huge event, and it was actually the Renaissance Center was putting it together. And my general manager at the time was like, I need, this particular set of seats for my VIP guests. Well, he calls me. Well, what am I going to do with it? Well, it was because of the relationship that I had with the RenCen. I placed a call. I said, can we please walk the space? We do have very high VIPs coming to this event, and I've been requested to see if we can get one of these types of tables. And when we walked, I talked. I was actually with our director of sales and marketing, Judy DeFore, who's Judy Booth by now, or now, married. She's no longer with the hotel. But we walked the space, and we were able to have, the RenCen understand the importance of us having those tables. So when you look at building a team, it's not just the team that's going to work day in and day out with you. It's every resource, every person that is going to support you throughout the way. And with that being said, you also need to support them and appreciate them. And I think many times, people don't say thank you enough. People just don't send a quick note saying we really appreciate what you've done. Or stepping out of your boundaries and helping someone when they're in need, when you know that you probably don't have the answer, but you can probably walk through it with them and help them and at least have them comfortable. So I think just the energy that we had, we were exhausted that year. I remember I checked into the hotel prior to Super Bowl 10 days prior, and my husband and our dog at the time, Scout, would just drive in front of the porte-cochere, and my dog would stick out his little head. I'd give him a kiss, give my husband a kiss, and they'd go back home. But I knew that I needed to be there. I knew that whatever happened, it wasn't me controlling everything. For me to be there to support the team was very important. And that's how we started that journey of becoming, and winning that global team. So, it's just really being there for your team, having them feel the confidence, supporting them, and allowing them to have somewhat of a life, balance with their professional life, because you want them to come in fresh. You want them to really want to be where they are and, give 100 and 180% each and every day that they work. So that's kind of how I started.
So, sorry. One thing that I've seen, and I try to be as observant as possible to everybody that I'm around, because I feel like you can learn things. I learn things from Mike all the time, and things I've learned from you. Everything you just described was basically putting out your caring, kindness, supportive mindset. However, what I've also seen in you is that you're also not afraid to lead that team. There's an assertiveness that I've seen in you. And I think there's a balance there between making sure that the people know that they're supported and empowered, but that you're not afraid to step up and say, all right, now get behind me because I'm going to take us to the promised land. And I've seen that assertiveness, and that's something else that I've picked up in my handful of times around you in a business sense. And number 3, something I've seen in you that I really admire is an attention to detail that I think is so unbelievably important in this industry. I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, not even attention to detail too. I was going to say something similar to that, but attention to those around you, those on your team, what they're going through, how they're reacting personally. It sounds like you're very in tune to that, and that's something I would say that a lot of leaders this day lack. They're just like, do what I say, get behind me, or else get out of the way. And going all the way back to 13-year-old you ice skating, obviously there was an innate ability to lead. Usually, I played hockey my whole life. They don't just put the youngest guy into the captain position and say, all right, everyone follow that guy. You had some abilities from there, but then, taking those experiences, being the youngest, leading a team that's older than you, you have to be aware of how people are feeling. And then obviously you grew from there. So, and knowing you, but not have as well as Derek, I can even see that just from, our limited interaction. So thanks for sharing on that.
Sure.
Tell the quick story of recently when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came to your hotel. There was something that you did for a particular player that you're a fan of.
Okay. Well, the segment is when you talk about leadership and being part of a team. When we had the opportunity to bid on one of the teams playing an entire week here, or practicing an entire week and playing the Lions, 2.5 years ago. We looked at it and I met with the team, and we actually had one of our sales managers was super knowledgeable about the NFL. And we all sat down and we're like, okay, what is this all about? And so she walked through every single piece of what we needed to do. And I'm not going to share my secrets because
I just want you to tell everybody what you did for Gronk.
It's a little above and beyond.
Okay. So I have a Polish cook. And so knowing he's Polish, I thought it would be nice for Christmas to have pierogi, homemade pierogi, and Polish sausage for him and a couple of the other coaches that were Polish. And so when they were having dinner, I stopped and chatted with him for a little bit. And I know, with them, they needed to win that game, right? They were focused on the Super Bowl, and congratulations to them. They did win. And I didn't know if he was going to eat carbs or whatever. But I did share with him my story. And he took the food and he walked away. Now, we had a hotel buyout. And so, following the COVID regulations and the NFL regulations, they were not eating in our meeting space or anything like that. So they would have to eat elsewhere. So I did hear that he did enjoy the Polish sausage and the pierogi, but that's
How
all
could
I'm
you
saying.
not?
Yeah. So
But those are the little touches, when if you have the ability to go above and beyond, in just that one little moment, why wouldn't you?
right. So they were there.
Why wouldn't you? I
at
love that.
Christmas time, right?
Oh yeah, we had them for Christmas.
Yeah. So Rob Gronkowski's there, and she sees, you know what? I'm gonna make this guy a Polish dinner he'll never forget. And so I'm sure he totally enjoyed that. Little details,
And I baked Christmas Polish cookies and things like that, and had them up as amenities in some people's rooms with a little story of my grandmother's recipe.
That's great.
So that when you become big and famous and stay there, he's Italian. I'm sure she'll
Also, half Polish though.
Oh, there you
half
go.
and half,
Oh.
split down the middle.
Perfect.
Sicily and Warsaw, essentially.
See, that
So
part I didn't know about you.
There you go.
Well,
Learn
and
something new.
Now this will be a team effort because my director of event management is Italian, and she makes the best meatballs. So we'll have to do a little mix of Polish and Italian for you.
Sounds good.
So episode
best
2
two
of Michelle will
cuisines.
be on site,
On-site,
at the Troy
A
Marriott.
cooking lesson.
Okay.
Okay, so during that story, you mentioned how they couldn't eat in one gathered space because of the guidelines, which is a good transition into the situation we find ourselves in right now, in this pandemic world that we live in. Obviously, everybody's affected in different ways. Over the last year, everybody's had to adjust what their lifestyle is and how they live. But those of us in the event industry have been hit extremely hard because literally overnight, our livelihood, our industry was
Illegal.
It was taken away. It
It's
was
now
made
illegal. Yeah.
And so, there were some ebbs and flows over the summer. There was a period of time where some of us could do some outdoor weddings and events. In a situation like yours where you don't have a giant tent out back on the big lawn because it doesn't exist, you guys had to suffer through that. So you recently had the opportunity to speak on our behalf up at the Capitol. So start by telling us, how did it come to pass that you were the one to speak to them?
Okay. Well, if you know me, I'm not quiet when I'm, determined to get an understanding of why you're doing what, and you're hurting an industry that I'm so passionate about.
Right.
So I would say probably 9 months ago is when I started sending emails, making phone calls to the governor's office, to Michigan Restaurant and Lodging, really trying to understand because, as early as June, we were talking, in May, we were talking restaurants and things like that, reopening. And it was just frustrating for myself because when you look at the whole piece of what we have in our industry, it's not just restaurants. And so many calls. I knew that, in order to get someone on the phone, and still, if anyone wants to call, 9:05 a.m., call the governor's office and someone will answer. They will not have an answer for you. They'll tell you they're going to get back to you, and they will not. I'm just warning you about that.
And also, just to clarify, because you mentioned it's not just restaurants, and the reason you said that was because, as you explained it to me, what we see in the media is restaurants. And not to downplay 1 second what they're going through, but us in the restaurant and event industry are going through that same plight, but we don't get the same coverage, so to speak, that industry is getting.
Yeah, and I think it's just the lack of education.
Yeah.
Because when you look at that, the two hits from COVID were, back early in the spring. They were two parent weddings at banquet halls, right? So if you hear any of the governor's, comments, or when she's at a press conference, she'll say gatherings, right? So for 9 months, it's been gatherings. Well, we want to know what gatherings are, because as our industry, we're just not gatherings. Yes, we do social. Absolutely. We do weddings, right? All of us do in this industry. However, we have corporate events. We have fundraisers. We have, board meetings. I mean, you think about our industry with all of the different vendors, including yourselves. You can set up meeting rooms to have great board meetings for our customers, right?
Right.
So in her mind, gatherings is a wedding, the outdoor. And it was
Drunk on a dance floor.
Totally, And what really irked me, and I sent her an email this morning after watching the press
March 19th,
conference.
2021, just so you point of reference.
And I think it was about 12:10 this morning, to be honest with you. And, I basically said, you still don't get it. You have no idea what our industry is about. You apparently, or your team, have not watched our Senate hearing or our House committee hearing. You have not read any of our emails. You just don't understand. And what's really scary is that I don't even know if she cares about the book Cadillac. And that's a pretty major piece in Detroit, right?
Yeah, it's an icon.
Right. And so I asked her, and Elizabeth Hertel, the new director of Human Health Services, I asked them to go back to watch our hearing, and hopefully it'll educate her, the two of them, on what our business is all about, because it's not gatherings.
Right.
And I said, it's one of my last comments to, in this particular email, was basically, it's about getting Michiganders back to work. It's not about having a beer on 4th of July, or the parties that you're going to have in your yard. Because I guarantee you, people are having beers right now, and they're having gatherings outside. You're not bringing the economy back. When you look at our industry, we were number 3 when it came to generating revenue for years into Michigan. My hotel still pays taxes. I'm 84% down in revenue. Mm-hmm. Occupancy down in 61%. And I know many of our vendors and the support teams that we use, you're barely making it if you are. And for her to talk about a beer on 4th of July for the Michiganders, and not about Michiganders going back to work so they can feel better and confident and say that they're contributing to the economy, really gets me upset.
Okay. Yeah, and to have the opportunity just to take care of your own family that's just been taken away.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so back to, you were sending emails.
Sorry, I get a little emotional.
No, that's
and passionate.
good. That's exactly what we want to do today. There's nothing overly formal about what we do here. This is a good old-fashioned discussion, and we're getting good and deep, and that's what we want to do. So you were saying you were sending emails. I still want to get to the point of how you were selected to go speak on our behalf. So it started off by you were initiating and proactive on sending communications, and where did it go from there?
Yes. So my one communication that I sent out was to Justin Winslow, who is the president of Michigan Restaurant and Lodging. And, he has just been working so hard to try to get our industry up and running. And, I thought, instead of, all this negative, commentary or please help us, I thought, maybe what we could do is have him get on a Zoom call with the Southeast hoteliers in Southeast Michigan, and really talk about Michigan Restaurant and Lodging and kind of what are the steps he's doing on a lodging standpoint to get us back open.
Right.
And really just picking the 38 hoteliers from boutique hotels, from different branded hotels, anyone that had 5,000 square feet of meeting space or more. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, would you be able to do this? And so he said, yes, that is great. We scheduled a date. And so we were communicating back and forth. Well, the day prior to the Zoom call, I received an email saying that they just received confirmation that there's going to be a House committee meeting regarding they're going to squeeze the meetings and events in for that particular meeting, not just food and beverage, and said, and asked, would you be able to to get on a Zoom call and speak and testify on behalf of the hotel? And I'm like, absolutely. I'm not going to get on a Zoom call. I'm going to drive there and I'm going to testify, right?
And who's the audience? I know that guy you're talking about is there, but who's the rest of the audience that would be on this?
The senators. So, half Democrats, half Republicans. This particular one was heavily weighted on the Democrats, but it really doesn't matter. They're all supposed to be supporting us, and Michigan. So it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. You really need to listen.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I was curious as to who would be listening to you say this. Okay.
So it was very interesting. So they said, okay, great. And so I quickly put together my testimony. I then said, how is this going to have an impact? Because, they're hearing about all these different stories about, we're going to close our doors and things like that. I wanted them to really understand what we're up against. And so at the time, they restricted us to 2 people, 2 households in one gathering, right? So I went to my event team, as I usually do, or any of my team members, and said, okay, you need to help me. This is my crazy idea, and this is where they get a little nuts, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, God, Michelle again. So I said, I need a diagram of our 9,000 square feet of meeting space.
Let's make sure we clarify that. 9,000 square feet. Okay.
Yes. Okay, that's our largest meeting space.
Got it.
9,000 square feet. So I said, I want a diagram of a meeting set up with 2 people, because that's all we can have is 2 households. I'd like a screen up, and I'd like it school set. And they're looking at me. And I said, please, believe me, this is what we need to have done. Okay, Michelle. And then I had a couple other sets, because this was after when we had the 25%, capacity, which actually worked out okay. We lost, but we didn't lose it as badly. Quarter 2, we lost 99% in revenue for meeting and events. Fourth quarter, we only lost 71. Still bad,
right?
But we were able to operate with that.
Because you could have 25%, which, I don't know if you may not know this off the top of your head, in that 9,000 square foot ballroom, how many people could you have in a meeting then?
Well, we can have, depending on the site or
Gotcha.
the layout and the set, but we can have up to 120 people.
Got it. Okay. That's an important number.
Yes. So I had them go ahead and give me a couple of the diagrams that we used when we were able to open at 25% for our corporate customers. And so I get there and I'm talking about all of my percentages. I'm only at my associates. I have 24% of my associates back in the hotel, which is so sad. And so I talked about that. I talked about local ownership, again, for them to get an understanding that it's not, a corporate,
Right.
own, that you'll just get money to continue to support yourself in the hotels. So then I started the testimony. And after I talked about my revenue loss and all of that, and I talked about the current or the restrictions that we had at 25%. And so there were screens in the room. So I had screens. So I had the diagrams, and I said, okay, so at 25%, this is what the 9,000 square foot meeting space looked like. It was a start, and we thank you for doing that. These are all of the safety measures, the protocols that we use, everything, right?
And to clarify, that showed a room that was very well spaced, that gave people, that followed every single guideline that had been laid out for us. You weren't trying to get around or skirt this or whatever. It was very by the books with room to spare.
Quite a bit of room to spare.
Okay.
When you're saying 6 foot, social distancing, we had more than that.
Yeah, you had like 50 feet minimum around each of those 125 people.
Yeah, it was just, and actually, and it was just really interesting. And we even go above and beyond. Troy, we always want to be the best in what we do. And so hearing some of the different ideas of how we can be a little bit more secure and supportive to our clients, to let them know that we really care about their safety. We've added, like different things. So we did, I can go on about that. But anyway, so they're looking at it, right? The 37 people in this room. And then I said, current restriction. And then I had them plop that diagram of 2 tables.
In 9,000 square feet.
9,000 square feet. And they looked, many of them had their heads down. They said, this is what you're giving us. This is what you're giving us.
Meanwhile, you're in a room.
So then I brought up and I said, as a matter of fact, looking around the room, I said, we're in roughly 1,000 square feet of meeting space. We have over 37 people in this room. We couldn't hold that.
There's your mic drop moment right there.
Total mic drop. So between letting them know that they weren't in compliance, and there was no social distancing, so you could sit wherever if you were a participant. There was nothing like that. And then having, and so that I closed with, just sharing about some of our group business going to Indiana and Ohio, even trying to work on dates to move them. They needed to have their meetings. They're still continuing education. There's board meetings. There are people that want to have meetings, and let them know about the loss of that. And so I closed, waiting for questions. Not one question. Immediately, quickly moved me off.
Because it's uncomfortable. Yeah, we don't want to deal with that.
It's uncomfortable. Maybe I just talk too much. I'm not sure.
No.
Well, you hit the truth, though.
Yeah.
The truth that they've either been avoiding or ignoring, and then they're like, well, next topic, please.
Yeah. And so I want to break this down a little bit. So for anybody that may be listening, at this point, I want to be clear that this discussion has nothing to do with wanting you to think this way or think that way. It's about seeing it from a particular perspective that you just laid out, that as event professionals, you're in this room. You're in this room with 37 other people. That's you said maybe ballpark 1,000 square feet or so.
Mm-hmm. Some wearing masks, some not.
Yep. And so some wearing masks, some not. Yep. But because of the simple perspective that it's not a social gathering, or it's not quote unquote an event, it's a press conference, or it's a 9 to 5 business. You look at it one way about physical people being in a room. But for some reason, no one can stand back and say, all right, why can't they then utilize their available space in this business within the guidelines we set forth to hold, whether it is, like you said, a business meeting or a conference, or even if it is a social event, but follows those guidelines. There's a disconnect between, and it all comes down to partially perception and them calling it an event. But also, and this is what I think, this is just my opinion, but I feel like, yes, Governor Whitmer and her team, every governor in every state, every politician, every policymaker has got 1.5 billion things that they have to think about and focus on and do this and do that. And because of that, issues like this, it's just no one ever stops to look at it, think about it, and make a decision that is based in logic and facts and common sense. It's easier to just lump large-scale decisions together and not have that personal connection to the people and the lives that they affect on a daily basis, even though it doesn't make sense. And that, as you were telling me this story when I first heard it from you, is where I thought the value was, that if you can get in front of these people and maybe get them to stop and just think for a little bit of, you know what? Everything she just said makes perfect sense and doesn't put us in a position to violate any laws or safety guidelines. So there you are. So you lay that out there. Tell us what happens next.
So then we hear she's going to have a press conference. So we're super excited about that. And she rolls out, Governor, that afternoon, I come driving back to Troy to have the Zoom call. It was really a great call. Justin was able to really share some good information about the membership and what they're able to do and all of that. And then kind of shared with us what the opening plan is that he's going to be presenting to legislators. So everything was great. Press conference comes. Wonderful. We're super excited. We think we've made a difference. So they open up restaurants at 50% and venues at 10%, entertainment venues, and hotels at up to 25 people. 25
people. For just a second. 25 people. Reminder that you have a 9,000 square foot ballroom.
Yes. So, of course, that didn't sit well with me. And so, it took me maybe a day and a half. And I sent a very detailed email out to the governor, Elizabeth Hertel, and to the politicians that support Oakland County, as well as the president of the CVB and our president of the Troy Chamber. And in that letter, I detailed everything out. And I'll be more than happy to share that with you. You can post it on, one of
I'd
your
love
sites.
to check it out.
Totally fine. But what I also included were new diagrams. So I did the diagrams for, the 25% opening, the ridiculous 2, and now this off the charts wacky decision of 25 people. And so I sent all of that out, and I received a basic form letter, which I tend to receive from the governor's office, giving me kind of guidelines on where I can pull up the restriction information, even though they didn't read my email. And then the president of the Troy Chamber reached out and said, whatever we can do to help to support. Because when you think about it, I'm not fighting for my hotel only. It's our entire industry.
Right.
When you think about it, I think back at like the fundraisers. We have calls that they want to do hybrids. They want to have the fashion show happening with music, with entertainment that many of, all of you can provide, and then have it streaming. But they won't even allow us to do that. Not having anyone in that 9,000 square feet of, space, except for the vendors that are, working on the actual program and the models. Nothing. Right? So I'm just so frustrated that when you look at everything, she thinks that just opening restaurants is okay and the 10%. Well, of course, we didn't get anywhere with that. And again, we were fighting a little bit more, and we received a call that the Senate, a subcommittee, reform subcommittee, was willing to hear our story. And so last week, we were there to present, which is it was really a great meeting. I hope we see some changes.
So at that meeting then, so now that's your second time, was it a similar presentation, or what changed in like, what did you add anything, or did you just try to drive that point home again?
Well, I added quite a bit, and our speakers, which I think were great, and we had great speakers at the first hearing. But this one, we had the Vice President of Government Affairs with Michigan Restaurant and Lodging. He started the story, just to say, hey, we're not here to slam, the governor or hotel. We need to have them really see how ridiculous these restrictions are. We also had Claude, who's our new CEO and president of the CVB.
The Detroit Convention
Yes.
and Visitors Bureau?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm old school CVB.
That's okay. Just to make sure, just in case, all of us in the event industry know, but just in case anybody out there isn't sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so he got on and he spoke his story, was very similar. And what I enjoyed hearing about his story was that he really focused on all of the different vendors. He said, number one, it takes over 3+ months for, a customer to call and say, okay, I see that your restrictions are loosened. We'd like to have a meeting. So if they call today, their meeting's not going to be held at least 3 to 6, 9 months, right?
Right.
But he also hit home on all of the support. So when it comes to, the entertainment business, all of you, the audiovisual folks that help support, all the IT folks that are here, from florists. And he really honed in that what you're doing is you're truly crippling everyone that you're talking, or many of the industries that you're talking about that you're so supporting, and you're giving that extra, $500 or $876 or whatever you are, for them to stay afloat. You're crippling them, because their jobs, all of our jobs, all tie in together. So we need our support people to be able to have the hotel industry, or our industry, I should say hospitality industry, really start performing again. And that really hit home with me, and it did with the senators. They were asking a lot of questions. He also shared that he was recently at a CEO meeting with a handful of different CEOs with convention bureaus in Florida. And he said, you thought, okay, the Wild Wild West, because that's how it's promoted.
Right.
They ended up, he said he felt so safe. They had masks. He did a COVID test prior to going. They had all social distancing. Everything was done the way that we keep telling these individuals that make the decision, on how we're going to do it. We're following every CDC guideline. He even had a COVID test when he left, and he said he really felt comfortable. So it was great for him to really share that, because the big piece is they were asking questions. It kind of brought up, oh, wow, well, you can do
Right.
that in the Wild Wild West. It wasn't the Wild Wild West. And so we had a lot of conversations about that. And then I did a detailed presentation, of course, on revenue loss and things like that. The other piece that I talked quite a bit about is HVAC units. Because if you look at some of the guidelines and how the state is able to offer more grants to restaurants to increase their HVAC units.
Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units.
Thank you.
Just in case anybody doesn't know.
Okay, perfect. And so I wanted to explain the heating and heating, air conditioning. You stumped me right now, Derek, but it's okay. It just our systems, because when you look in our industry and our meeting space, they're major. They're we just in that 9,000 square feet, we have 8 separate units, 14-ton units that either heat or cool the 9,000 square feet, meeting space. Not only that, we've upped the outside air because that's what they wanted it to do. So we went from 10%, which is a standard, to 25%. We also change our filters now bi-monthly as opposed to quarterly. All these industry standards we've done, and this is what they want to have done. Well, when you look at our space, our hotel space, we have everything. The only thing that we really don't have are going from MERV 7 filters to MERV 13, and I won't go into too much detail because I'm not the director of engineering. However, those pieces will come once we start getting business. They're very, very expensive to change. They're like triple the cost, these MERV 13s, and once we start getting business, we'll go ahead and do that. So I had quite a bit of conversation regarding that. We did show the videos, and thank you again, Derek, for taking your drone. And
no problem.
it was awesome. So we showed some pictures of the ballroom set at 25 people, which was ridiculous. We also talked about, like for my hotel, she opened up the indoor pools. So basically, my 2,700 square foot pool, indoor pool, we can have 72 people in that at a time, which is hysterical,
But
right?
25 people safely spaced in a 9,000 square foot ballroom.
Totally.
There right there is a good example of how weird and just off the wall.
Random side note, you can now swim, but you can't go down a slide into the pool because it's extra dangerous for some reason too. We do some water parking with my family and my kids, and you just can't go down a slide these days.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify why you were explaining that about the HVAC systems and all that, because the ventilation and the circulation of the air, the reason why outdoor venues with only one wall and 3 open walls are okay because of the way airflow is versus the way it is inside. But you're taking these steps to vastly improve not only the circulation of the air, but the quality of the air. And it's just one more step and one more reason why there's a safe environment with which we could be holding certain types of events.
Absolutely.
And that's why you were explaining that.
Yeah, and I had to educate them because they just, again, to your point, Derek, they just don't get it, And so it was interesting. The questions that were thrown at me, had a little bit to do with HVAC, and then also the safety. Like, do you mandate masks? Well, of course we do. What happens if someone doesn't wear one? Well, we've evicted them. I've personally evicted people without masks, and then talking about how intense our protocols are when it comes to the meeting space. If someone rents our space, we have that space locked down 24 hours before they arrive. We have linenless tables, so the quick surfacing, cleaning the surfacing when they break. We don't have any of our associates go in after it's fully sanitized. We figure out when their breaks are so we can have their meals outside, out of the meeting room, all boxed, everything like that. So less interaction, less transaction. So I've walked through everything with them. They asked about COVID cases in my hotel. We don't have any, but these are the procedures. So they thanked me for all of this great information, which, I just hope it gets somewhere. The managing director of the Inn at St. John spoke, and he was pretty powerful. He does 250 weddings there annually.
Many of which we work on ourselves.
Absolutely. And they were shocked when they saw those pictures of what the ballroom looked like with 5 tables. I mean, it's an embarrassment. And so basically, our end result was for us to be treated fairly when it comes to putting these restrictions on, making sure that we are based on capacity of square footage as opposed just to some random number. I have called the DHHS office many times. I called Oakland Human Health Services to ask them because I was like, okay, what does this mean? Where are you getting these metrics? And when I explained my situation, they don't have answers.
Right.
They're stumped. So the more education that we can give to whomever is listening, in my mind, in my heart, I'm hoping that it'll get to someone that can make a decision to really realize that we are not being treated fairly and they need to relook at these restrictions because it's just not fair. And, if they don't, you're going to see many more foreclosures. We're going to have many of our vendors having to close the door because, you can only go for so long without getting any type of revenue. It's very sad.
True.
So much awesome stuff there. And everything so the last, I don't know, probably 30 minutes since we got going on this topic was laying the groundwork of the facts and the bullet points, things you've said and presented, but the information itself that you had the chance to present. And I think when I heard you first tell me all of this, and you got into more detail today, which is great, but when I got to hear you tell me this story, it gave me a perspective somewhere innately and by gut instinct. I felt like there was a lot more to this than what I could see on the surface. And everything you just explained gets into that level of detail that anybody who is an event professional, and no matter what you do, and obviously you as a hospitality and, in the lodging industry and the events that you guys throw there, or Mike and the, videography and photography are in and on the entertainment side, we've just been told that you're stopped, you're shut down. It can't happen because there's a deadly virus. There's a difference between saying, I care about the safety of me and my family and those around me, and just saying, I accept a general decision that affects me so deeply without accepting that I can question that decision. That's where I think the breakdown happens between people who make this political is if you question it, you must be here, but if you don't question it, you must be there. And I just feel like all of that information should give us a platform to say, we can do this safely. We can show that we care about us and our families and the people around us and the people who attend these events, but we can do things safely and we can get back to work. And so I have a question for both of you. I feel like I mentioned before, at some point, there's just so many decisions to be made, so many policies to figure out and enforce, so many people to please that and by they, I mean anybody who's a policymaker or a decision maker, ends up just working in massive generalities and doesn't have either the capacity or the willingness to get into the level of detail that you laid out that could lead to a decision that would benefit all of us. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I feel like it's more that than it is a sinister plot to, ruin us. I feel like it's just a level of, I don't want to use the word incompetence because that's more insulting than I want to be. I feel like it's just a level of ignorance to where we could be. And like you said, all of us should be pushing these facts to the people that make decisions. So how do we get people that might be listening to this? What are your recommendations and suggestions on other than saying, well, I just heard this gal on a podcast and I think we should be open. What are some tips on what people should and could be doing to try to help, push this initiative along?
Yes, thank you. I think first and foremost is communicate it out to your local politicians, send emails, and I wanted to have this conversation here because I think it's important if we create a team and figure out how we can just keep sharing information for at least at some point someone to listen to up at the Capitol, right? But we have to just continue to bombard them with emails. You may not hear from them, but you know that someone's reading them. And if they get enough, they're going to say, okay, this is a pretty big deal. I don't know what to do, because I've been fighting this battle for many years.
But
for
you've been
many
fighting it
months.
alone for months.
I
for
have.
the most part, there's
I
not
have.
a lot of people that knew how to.
Yeah, I think we
engage.
need to figure out how, we can. Yeah, I mean, you've been the advocate for the industry doing this locally. How can we help? Not just what can we do to, educate people, but how can we help you specifically to get to the next step?
Yeah, I don't want people to be afraid. If they're passionate about what they do, they need to, say, I'm here to help. We could kind of get together on a quick, call to figure out what we want to do as next steps. And, if I have the opportunity to be able to get another hearing, we can certainly look at doing that for the entire industry. I can work with Michigan Restaurant and Lodging to do that. People are afraid to talk because in their mind, they're like, okay, what if I do get a COVID case? What's going to happen? Well, you can't think that way. You have to think of what am I doing to make sure that our customers and our associates are the safest that they could be and that we are starting to generate revenue. And that's what we have to figure out. So, I know that the reason why the amateur sports came back because they were ready to file a suit, right, against the governor. I do know why she's increased the entertainment venues by 20%. That has a lot to do with the conversation that she had with Detroit Tigers.
Right. With opening day pending, which for those that may not know, opening day for Detroit Tigers baseball is literally a holiday in this city and is bigger. Opening day is bigger for us than it is for most teams out there. So the city was pushing hard to make sure that they got that, they got some sort of capacity for that day.
But there was also another side to that story. And if anyone wants to join our team to push and get our industry open, I'll be happy to share that on the call.
Yeah,
I will not share it now, but it's a
Right.
very interesting story.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
So this is obviously this position that you've put yourself into is pretty lofty in the sense that there's a lot of responsibility you've taken on. And at some point, when the hotel gets opened back up again, this is going to be it's going to be pretty interesting to see for yourself to have to get back into just going back to work on a daily basis and getting back to the normal grind and all that kind of stuff, and not thinking at such a a statewide perspective. You got to get back in the trenches at some point too. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. So I still did my breakfast buffet assignment last week, because we're opening very limited right now. And so I have roughly about 12 associates that work throughout the day, every day a week, depending on occupancy. But we decided we needed to open up the restaurant for our customers to have a hot breakfast. So we opened up a very minimal buffet, no ordering off the menu. So we have one cook, and us managers go ahead and serve our customers every morning. So I'm still that far detailed in the operation. Am I sleeping? Not much, but I'm so determined. And when we do open up, I'll just be on fire even more, to get more business and really to celebrate and just bring back all of our amazing family of associates that we're missing terribly.
All of us. I mean, and we are ready. And, Mike's a good example of the every damn podcast. This word keeps coming up, the pivot.
The pivot.
Mike was actually just out in California shooting for what could end up being a Netflix show, which is pretty awesome. But he's known for his artistic, creations in the wedding world and the things that he does. Obviously we got this podcast that we're launching so that we can connect with event profs and creative thinkers everywhere, and all the things that we're doing. We're trying everything we can to try to keep ourselves hustling and growing and expanding. Right?
Yeah, I mean it's it's a challenge. The pivot word. You have a lot of extra free time, so what are you going to do with it? Because you can't go out working on the weekends, or you can, but only for 3-4 hours at a time, or whatever it might be. But it's been a challenge, and it's great to have inspiration from people like you. So on a personal level, on a business level, on a state level, I love what you're doing, and I'm here to help.
Yeah.
We want to get back to work. I have an amazing crew that works with me that's kind of hanging around at home, not able to get back literally in the trenches to filming or to photographing, and we want to get back to doing what we love.
Yeah. And I want to clarify again that everything that we've been talking about today isn't just a biased political agenda to be screw this person or that person. You want to do things the right way, in a safe way that protects those people that work for you as well as the guests that may attend these events. we just feel like we can do it more than we're being allowed to do it. And that's the big issue that we're trying to push here. Not a particular political agenda or, put anybody down that feels a certain way. And I get the argument of like, well, if you have a 300-person wedding, you can tell them whatever you want, but they'll get drunk and be on the dance floor. Yeah, I get it. I understand that, especially as somebody who is in the band that facilitates that crazy dance floor. I get it. But there's a difference between saying, maybe we can't have a 300-person wedding indoors yet, but we sure as hell can have more than 25 people in a 9,000 square foot ballroom for many different types of events and meetings, right?
Yes. My ask is very simple, just for everyone that makes these decisions up at the Capitol, to unite as a team, as we do each and every day, to run our business, and leave all the other stuff, on the side. Focus on opening up the state. Do it in a safe manner. You have professionals here that are willing to take anything on to do it. Just allow us to do what we do best. And just be unified and not go back and forth, because it's not helping any of us. It's not helping their egos or anything like that.
Right.
We're in this together. The state has to be very focused on getting back and bringing this economy, because, I know several of my friends, they've moved out of the state. So we're starting to see that, which is kind of scary. New York did that, a while back.
Yeah.
Now we have Michiganders doing that, and business is going to be moving. So we need just to be unified, support each other, figure this out together, and support each other as we figure it out.
Yeah. And, at this point, again, depending on when somebody might listen to this, we're at a point where we're pushing hard to reach this 70% of vaccination rate. And I think that to me will be a big, okay, you got what the goal has been hit. We reached that vaccination rate. Now there's no other excuse why we shouldn't be able to start opening up on a much bigger scale. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully in the next, 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be pretty close to hitting that rate, and we'll see where we go from there. So, Michelle, this has been awesome. That hour went by so fast, and we definitely want to come out to the hotel next time and shoot an episode out there with you.
That'd be great in our 9,000 square foot.
We got lots of space to do it.
We actually probably can have like 20 people, in the crowd asking us questions. We can really set it up.
Yeah.
And it'd be fun.
You got
We'd
a
love
lot
to
of
have
leisure
you.
room. Everyone gets
Yeah.
72 chairs.
That
Yes,
actually would be
exactly.
fun. Although now in hindsight, we should have shot this episode in that ballroom with just the three of us and 9,000 square foot and say, listen, we're at our peak right now. Nobody else can come in.
Totally.
We would have. Well, thank you again, Michelle. You're the best.
Welcome.
We love you to death. Appreciate you being on. And boy, I can't wait to get this out to everybody.
Awesome. And thank you for having me and allowing me to share our voice and share how supportive I am with this industry. So anything I can do, please reach out.
Keep on keeping on, sister.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rock on.